All right. We're going to go live. We're going live. Let's make sure the audio is coming through. See crispy like. Don't have to worry about people not being able to hear me, understand me. And there we go. Good. Audio is coming through. Woo-hoo. We are ready to begin. And Arts is here. Hello. Great to be here. Darkest Agent, Lars. Why must you stream so late? Because today was taking down Christmas Day, as sad as that is, or at least the beginning of taking down Christmas. So I was busy today and knew I would not be able to really knuckle down and stream at the earlier time that I would normally like to do. So sorry, guys. That's just the way that is. But I am here. I am ready. And I definitely got some things that I wish to talk about tonight. Obviously, dive a little bit into Stranger Things season 5. I have not, I have not not read, because thinking my brain is right now thinking writing and reading. I have not yet watched all of it, so my opinion will very likely change by the time that I get to the end of season 5. But what I've seen thus far, I'm like, you know what? I've actually got some positive thoughts. I also have some very critical thoughts as someone who likes Dungeons and Dragons and as someone who believes that Dungeons and Dragons can help improve your writing. So, talk a little bit about that. I had said last week that I would do my review of Avatar Fire and Ash. I did not do that, so it's time for me to finally get around to doing that. And of course, also follow up with last week's live stream and discuss whether or not people agree. And it's okay if they disagree with me, but then you must come with your own facts about why or why not Aladdin has the best animated opening of all Disney movies. So that is what we will be talking about tonight. And Art's good to hear that you got my message. Sorry, I haven't been able to to follow up on that, but we will be talking Deltarune soon. Oh boy, I'm excited. So much to talk about when it comes to Deltarune, especially just with the excitement for the next chapter. Whenever it comes out, sometime this year, it's coming out. And you've also only seen some bits and pieces of the season. Yeah, I've mostly seen people's criticism of it. And one of the things I just have to say right off the bat, one of the scenes that I know that Twitter just like took to task for, like, who wrote this dialogue? This is absolutely awful. Is in one of the very opening scenes of the first episode, when Dusty comes to school wearing the Hellfire shirt, and everyone's giving him dirty looks, and the jocks from the previous season, who had been causing all kinds of problems, show up and are about to fight him at his locker. And then the other nerds arrive, and so you have a standoff of nerds versus jocks. And honestly, like thinking about what happens in that particular scene, I was like, I don't know why people didn't like this, unless you're all like, no, the jocks would have absolutely annihilated the nerds. Which, yeah, if there had been more jocks on hand, they absolutely would have gone and fought the nerds right there in the middle of the school. Absolutely would have happened in the 80s, would have happened today. As someone who was a teacher and and saw what kind of petty things kids would fight over and try to fight in the middle of school about, oh yeah, it would totally happen. But jocks, like anyone else, also can do math and realize, there's 2 of us, 4 of them, and one of them is a big black kid who can hit hard. So yeah, we're not going to be we're not going to fight it out just now. So I'm like, yeah, it makes sense. And when you're not throwing fists, you've got a bunch of dumb teenagers throwing words at each other with the nerds pulling out their thesauruses. So yeah, it's going to sound really dumb. And honestly, I was like, this works. This works with everything that we know about these characters. This works with everything that's happened in the previous seasons. I don't know what everyone is getting so bent out of shape with when it comes to this particular scene. Art says, why was the penultimate episode focused on a coming out moment? I mean, nothing against it, but it seems kind of oddly placed. Having not yet gotten that far in the season, I don't know. But yes, let me just say this. When the world is about to end, or is on the verge of ending, there's a lot. I mean, people would say, well, I mean, if you're going to say it at any point, you might as well say it now. To which I get that. But a lot of the emotional energy in an end of the world scenario comes with everything else that's already been set up, what's been put into motion. This is one of the reasons why, and I know a lot of people are not happy with me whenever I bring this up, but the bubbling scene in the last episode of Adventure Time, like the OG show, wasn't needed. It wasn't needed. It took away from the moment. And it was one of those heralding scenes where it's like, oh yeah, no, we're not actually going to have a fight with Gold, which is kind of annoying because it's like, wait a second, we've been building up to this showdown with Gold, and you mean to tell me that a song from BMO is what solves it all, and is inspired by the power of bubbling? It's just like, why? How did we go down this route? So, you know what? Maybe that would be like a good writing lesson in the future, especially after being able to finish Stranger Things season 5. How to best place a lot of the emotional beats that you want to have happen in your story before you knuckle down and are like, yes, we are now going to deal with saving the world. If those are the stakes that you're aiming for. And Fire Fun Time says, to be honest, I thought that the Knights of Guinevere greenlighting video would be today, but it's either next week or they're waiting for February. I am just going to say, as far as the Knights of Guinevere greenlighting goes, who knows when it's going to happen, Fire Fun Times. I mean, it would be great to get it sooner rather than later, but the fact that we've waited this long for it, again, means that they have not made the money necessary to justify the show in sales. And because the show has only gotten 14, let's see here, let me just make sure I have the number right about exactly how many views it's got. Okay, on up. And granted, the number of views that you would see publicly are actually not the real number of views behind the scenes. It's actually usually more than. So it's right now reading 16.3 million views. Could be around 16.4 million, maybe higher, but at about maybe $4,000 per million views, you're looking right there then at roughly $64,000 minimum, most likely, that they've made just on ad revenue alone. In order to cover the cost of the show and set up for the next episode, they need to cover at least $200,000. It's very likely around $200,000 is what it went into the production of this show, possibly more. So that means that they have to make up over $100,000 at least in merch sales. And if the merch sales just aren't there, you can't justify making the show. And not that it means that it would be a bad show or anything. Glitch Productions wants to make Knights of Guinevere happen. They want a full season. But because they're an indie production studio, and on top of that, an indie production studio who just slapped down a load of money to make Lackadaisy happen, this means that they can't just simply say, well, we're making so much money thanks to the amazing digital circus, that means that we can just greenlight everything. Money, money, money. Because it's actually not all there. On top of that, it's interesting to note that the latest episode, Beach episode of the Amazing Digital Circus has not made as much money as one would think. Its view count is seriously down compared to all of the other released episodes of the Amazing Digital Circus. The view count could still go up, but it hasn't been climbing as high or as fast as I would have thought. If I hop on over to right now hop on over again to Glitch Productions just to see exactly where we are with the Amazing Digital Circus. View the full playlist, go down to beach episode. We are right now currently at 46.1 million views. And like I said, they probably have more than that. So it's probably closer to 46.2 million views. And while that is absolutely phenomenal, like do not write off the Amazing Digital Circus just because they have a paltry 46 million views. Most of Hollywood and most streaming services would love to get those kinds of numbers. Holy cow. That count right there alone from one episode counts for nearly half of what Rings of Power got for their first season. So the Amazing Digital Circus is doing very well. But again, thinking about, okay, we only make about around $4,000, maybe more, for each million views. You multiply that real quick. You're like, okay, then so 46 times 4, we got 160. Okay, $184,000 against a budget of around $200,000, though very likely because the Amazing Digital Circus has been doing so well and we've been able to see the quality of each episode go up as they have, very likely they've spent more money. Let's be honest and say it's probably at least $300,000, which means that they've gone more than half of the way towards covering their costs just on ad revenue alone. But now it requires all of the merch sales. Merchandise for the Amazing Digital Circus is very popular. They just came out with a new with a new commercial, which means that they're doing well. People want the merch. They want to get the merch on out there. Woohoo! They're doing well with that. But what those numbers indicate is that the big success of the Amazing Digital Circus has to actually now be geared more towards making the show continue and do well. So again, because if my count, and this comes back to a previous video that I did now about 2 months ago, if they did what I think and put up $2 million to help make Lackadaisy happen, that's $2 million that they easily got from all of the surplus from the Amazing Digital Circus. Like, the Amazing Digital Circus has done so well that just based on ad revenue alone, they've been able to keep that show going. So easily they could pop down $2 million, but that's still a lot of money. That's a lot of money for an indie company. So that means that they need to be smart with all of their other earnings from all of their other shows. Gaslight District, they're going full steam ahead. They've been able to budget things out in order to make that happen, so they're going full steam ahead. Good luck to them. I hope it does great. But that means that that means that the resources are not immediately there to make Knights of Guinevere happen. Knights of Guinevere must therefore prove by how much money it makes that is a viable option for them to continue to make the show. So all of this is to say, Fire Fun Time, if you want Knights of Guinevere to happen, you need to buy the merch. You need to introduce as many people as you possibly can to Knights of Guinevere, and you need to convince them to buy the merch. If you can do that, Knights of Guinevere will happen. And maybe they've already reached that point. or maybe they're getting really close to it. Maybe they're very far away. They're not going to say. They're not going to say, because then this is something that Glitch has done now for years, is they keep their financials very close to the vest. And that honestly makes good sense. So we're just left to guess based off of our baseline knowledge of what it takes to make any singular episode on an industry standard, and what Glitch publicly has had in terms of success, and what we know of what that generates in terms of YouTube revenue, and just start translating that on over to the best that we can. And hey, ISO, great to have you here. And we also have Tyler Goodman here. Excellent. Morgana Ignis, who voices Sally Mae from Hell of a Boss, is now working at Glitch Production. Oh, that's cool. And maybe that portends really good things for future projects. We'll just have to see. And Art says the Amazing Digital Circus has built up a lot of goodwill over time. They probably saved a couple $1,000 with those PS2 fish. Oh yeah. Yes, those PS2 fish. Oh my gosh, what a joke, and yet so glorious. Then Fire Fun Time says, well, whatever they're pumping in the air conditioners over at Glitch is sure getting them to work hard with high quality. Yes. My brain instantly jumps to a video that my sister and her family showed me during Christmas time from the YouTuber Fat Electrician about this one Finnish soldier during the Winter War who got really high on meth by mistake and just went ridiculously rogue for 48 hours before he crashed out. And and so throughout the entire video, it's all like, this is brought to you by meth. Why is this happening? Well, because of meth. It's like, what are they pumping in the air conditioners? Someone call in Heisman. Say, someone calling the guys from Breaking Bad. We need the magic stuff. Hopefully that's not what they're doing. That would be awful. That's bad for health. Don't do it, guys. Or says, I'm impressed with the quality put into the projects they put out. They're not afraid to take their time to make sure whatever they put out is good. Exactly. And that's what's very important. Glitch takes their time to make the things to make whatever they're doing the best it can be, rather than just pumping it out to meet deadlines, which is very good for the craft, but it's a business model that Hollywood would never approve on their own. And that's one of the reasons why they have to justify everything they do with high merch sales, because their model for making their productions is antithetical to the streaming model or to the instant fulfillment model, which has now been set up by almost all of entertainment these days, which is you want something, we're going to get it to you as fast as we possibly can. Yeah, there's some projects that take a long time, and usually that's coming out of Japan. That's because Japan is their storytelling industry, especially when it comes to anime, is just absolutely bogged down with all of these promises and contracts. They can have an absolute banger of a show on their hands, and they're not allowed to make the next season because they already have 3 other contracts that they must fulfill before they can even return to the new moneymaker. So, contracts. That's why it's very important. If you get into this kind of profession, pay attention to the contracts. Read the contracts. From publishing to animation to video games to movies. Know what someone is trying to make you legally obligated to do, and what you are legally obligated as well not to do. Contracts. I wish I had more experience within that particular realm. I've only had to deal ever with one contract, so it's not like I can be all like, yeah, sure. So let me take a contract right here. We're going to break it on down for you, and so that way you can see what works, what doesn't, and this is what you should pay pay attention to, I can just give you the most basic terms and accept. Yeah, so that's how most people act with acting like, oh yeah, sure, get me what I want right now, right now. But when you're the creator, do not sign off on anything until you know what you are owed and what you are allowed to do, because it could really backfire real quick on you. Are you saying you wish to become an attorney at law at one time? No, no. Actually, at my very first job, everyone said, "Dude, you should you quit studying to become a historian. You should just become a lawyer. Like you talk like a lawyer and you sound like you've got the brain to be a lawyer." I'm like, I don't want to be a lawyer. I don't want to do all those tests. That just sounds awful. So, I think that preamble is good enough to say, okay, we got the people here who want to be here. So, what shall we do first? Shall we wrap up the conversation from last week, talking about the Disney openings? If you've seen, for instance, my analysis of Aladdin, which I argue is objectively the best opening, and not because it is personally my favorite opening. Again, my personal favorite opening of any Disney movie or of any animated Disney movie is Beauty and the Beast. But objectively speaking, I would contend that Aladdin takes the cake because it cheats and manages to cram 3 separate openings into one. So we can talk about that, or we can dive right on into talking about dungeon crawling, or you guys can hear me rant about Avatar: Fire and Ash. Tell me, what would you guys, which route shall we take? We are at a crazy fork in the road. There are 3 tines. Do we do dungeon crawling? Do we do Avatar? Or do we wrap up the Disney conversation from last week? Deltarune! Heyo! Oh man, we've already had a little bit of a Deltarune talk. I need to do a quick Deltarune video based on the text drop from Toby. I know that by now it's a wee bit late, but I think there's still some fun I could have with that. It says, at the moment, I want to know how to craft a good dungeon and then how to crawl through it. Preferably not on your belly unless you absolutely have to. All right, so we got a vote for the dungeon crawl, which I'll be honest, I am quite excited to talk about dungeon crawling, and D&D, and also my thoughts on what Stranger Things did with the concept of a dungeon crawl. Because I'm like, ooh, I like what you did. All right, or more like, I like what you set up, and I hate your execution. Dang it. All right, so we've had our vote so far for the dungeon crawl, so let's do dungeon crawling. Okay, so for those of you who do not know what it means to do a dungeon crawl is actually a play on pub crawling. So if you don't know what a pub crawl is, here, we're going to do some terminology right here. Pub crawl. Pub crawl. When you and your friends try to go to as many bars as possible and not drop dead drunk. So that is a pub crawl. Pub crawl, you've got so many pubs and bars you're going to hit that day or that night, and you're trying to hit them all before you drop dead drunk. There you have it. Pub crawl, when you try and find a drink. and maybe a pub crawl, yeah, for some people is, I just want a good drink, but there's no good drinks anywhere in town. Well, that's when you go to the Orange Julius. Well, a dungeon crawl is similar in that sense of you're doing this until you drop dead, or you're trying to not drop dead while doing this. So a dungeon crawl is you're going to go into a really difficult area. And typically it's some ancient dungeon, it's an ancient castle, it's ancient ruins, and you are basically there to be with friends and survive as long as you can. So, dungeon crawl, go somewhere ancient and have a good time surviving with friends. Get loot and experience. So that is, in its most basic terms, what a dungeon crawl is. Now, I should probably have put into quotes good time, because dungeon crawling can sometimes be absolutely torturous. If you want some torturous dungeon crawling experiences without having to play yourself, just watch the first season or the first campaign of Critical Role, or about halfway through the second campaign of Critical Role. There's actually 2 different instances where they had like a legit dungeon crawl, and holy cow, that was rough. So much fighting, so much slogging, so much just pain. Now, the thing is that a dungeon crawl, however, can be a fantastic experience for everyone at the table if the players come with a mentality of, like, it's a pub crawl. We are here to have fun. We are here to just be wild and just do stuff for the loot, for the experience, and for all those crazy laughs and inside jokes that are going to come out of this, because we know that otherwise we're just going to suffer. So that's the mentality that everyone should have at the table. And then the dungeon master needs to come with the dungeon crawl experience, say, okay, I have so many baddies and monsters for you to fight. I have so many puzzles for you to deal with. I have so many traps. I have mazes or stuff like that. And here's the kind of loot that incentivizes you to continue going forward. Because if I'm just getting paid 5 copper pieces to take down a level 12 troll who happens to be able to cast spells, that sucks and I don't want to play anymore. But if I'm taking on a level 12 troll that can somehow cast spells, and if I manage to take down that troll, I get some really seriously cool items and maybe like a really nasty smelling chest of silver pieces, then sweet, awesome, I'm here for it. So it's a bit of a balancing act. People need to have the right mentality for a dungeon crawl, and the dungeon master needs to present an interesting and rewarding series of challenges in order to make it worth it. When you can bring all of that together, the dungeon crawl experience is amazing. And the last campaign that I've DM'd was one that was basically just one massive dungeon crawl experience, going into this castle hidden under a desert that constantly was shifting its rooms about. And so you could go in one day and raid the castle, and then if you come back the next day after you like had a break and healed up, the party would then encounter completely different challenges because of how the castle rearranges itself. So they're like, oh, sweet, and that sucks too, because they didn't know then what to expect. So that's in brief one of the experiences I've put together myself as a dungeon master. Let me though quickly catch up then with what some of you guys have said right here. So Art says, quick story. I was at a bar in a Texas roadhouse tonight. The bar was full and it was busy. I was sitting at the end of the bar where the wait staff comes in with our food and drink, and some rando guy comes around, stands around and says, "Hey, I'm thirsty. Can I get something while I'm waiting for a seat to open?" The poor lady tending the bar was unsure. A manager comes around and tells the group, "Guys, you have to clear out. You can't block the wait staff." Thankfully, they didn't make a fuss, but I felt crowded a bit there. Oh boy. Oh boy, that's why I normally try to avoid sitting anywhere close to where the staff or the kitchens are if I can avoid it. I just don't want to be in the way and get on someone's bad side. Fire Fun Time says, actually, I think 8 episodes is a perfectly good amount for a show with something like Glitch. It's not too much that it would cost nearly $100, but it's not cheap either. Or I'm guessing $100 million, but it keeps it relatively cheap, though. Oh, yeah, no, a shorter season model works very well for Glitch. As much as people don't like that we only get so many episodes, I'm looking at you, Murder Drones. I says, I tell you, every time I replay a game, there is always that dungeon. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. There's always that dungeon experience. And Jake Branch is here. Hi, great to have you here. Stormcrow says, hey, Lars. Oh, hey, look, I know Stranger Things is a bit of a hot topic these days, so can you make a video on how they effed up the ending? Well, I haven't seen the show. I haven't seen the rest of the series yet. I'm only 2 episodes into the final season. So my opinion, as I've stated thus far, is very likely to change. So far, I've been enjoying it. 2 episodes in, and I'm like, I don't have anything to complain about. I don't see what everyone else is complaining about. I do have a nitpick in the dungeon crawling experience, which is what our first topic is. But it didn't ruin the first 2 episodes for me. It was more like, hey, guys, we were this close. They're like, cue that moment from Star Wars or from Star Wars Rogue One, where it's like we were this close. It's that's how I felt after watching The Crawl. But yeah, once I'm done with the whole season, then yeah, I might end up doing a video on it, depending on how I feel I can contribute to that conversation. Firefun says, not a whole lot of story, but it's still acceptable and fine. You can have 8 episodes. Okay, so yeah, following up with what you were saying earlier about the show length. And Stormcross says, hey, just asking, one of my GMs had my party go through a castle the size of an underground city. At the bottom of the dungeon, we found Vecna and Orcus. We were level 8. Is that fair or not? So what I would say, based on my understanding of, if you decide to play a campaign with Vecna as the main villain, is that once you've introduced Vecna, you need to make it very clear to the players that death is now absolutely on the table. That's actually in the original play guide for a Vecna campaign going back to, was it the mid 80s? That has a warning for the Dungeon Master saying, do not play this campaign unless you intend to kill characters, and let all the players know that their characters can die. Not that they will die, but that they can easily die in this campaign. And so that is something that if that mentality, if that understanding is well communicated to the players, then already introducing Vecna at level 8, in my opinion, isn't a bad way to go. The thing is that if the Dungeon Master intends on letting the players have a chance to beat Vecna, that means that the Dungeon Master needs to be thinking about how the players can level up sufficiently to get to a point where they can beat Vecna. How is Vecna's plot to restore his body and gain the power to ascend to godhood? How is that going to play out over the course of an entire campaign? So those are all things that really comes down on the Dungeon Master. And again, I don't see anything wrong with introducing Vecna to the players at level 8, but that's something then that the Dungeon Master needs to think about in terms of how to pace out the campaign, because otherwise you can truly overwhelm the players. So the players feel overwhelmed, like they never even had a chance. Now, granted, against Vecna, the whole point is it's going to be very, very hard to win. That's the point. But there still needs to be a chance. If there was never a chance for the party to actually influence the events of the campaign, that it was just basically determined from the beginning that Vecna would win, or that a DM NPC is going to have to come in and save the day, that ruins the experience because it takes you out of the shared storytelling experience. Dungeons and Dragons is meant to be a shared story between everyone at the table. So that's my long-winded answer to your question. I says they dropped the ball in the last season, especially. It's the typical forced Disney ending. No spoilers, but it was just so Disney. Oh boy. Ugh. That's a I mean, especially if it's modern Disney, that's not good. Oh boy. Well, my one of my sisters says that she's very anxious to hear my thoughts and to have a long discussion about the season when I finally finish it. So it's on my list of things to do. I didn't keep up with it as it was releasing just because I was so busy. I did not have the mental capacity or the time to dedicate to it. But now that I've recharged after Christmas, I am ready to tackle it. And Stormcrow says, we basically got out of that because someone drew the wish card from the deck of many things. One of the players had to teleport Orcus to hell, essentially sacrificing himself. Let me clarify, our GM doesn't like to plot our campaigns. He wings as he goes. He confessed that he essentially put Orcus there because he thought about it 2 days before the session. So, Stormcrow, based on that, just on that, without knowing any more about the campaign, what I would say is that's not good. That's not good because, again, if you're going to introduce Vecna that early on, like himself, into the campaign at that point, it needs to there needs to be a way for the dungeon master to, again, allow for character growth and leveling up, so that way, again, the players even have a somewhat of a chance against Vecna. Having to sacrifice a player to get rid of Orcus, that is pretty much on par with everything. I can see that, as rough as that might be, as high of a sacrifice and a cost as that might be. But if the dungeon master doesn't have a plan, it's just like winging it, that's an issue. That is absolutely an issue. And again, that kind of runs counter to what is in the dungeon master's guidebook for the Vecna campaign. Because you need to plan it out. Because you need to be able to allow for opportunities for the players to even have a chance. Otherwise, it's not fun. Like, it's great to have a high stakes campaign. It's great to be like, hey, look, we can accept that characters are going to die, and that heightens the tension, that heightens the stakes involved. But people need to be on board for it, and the dungeon master needs to have plans in order to make sure that things work out enough for the players so the players don't feel like they're getting beat up on. The only thing that's ever been made intentionally for Dungeons and Dragons to beat up on the players is his name just escaped me. There's a specific dungeon from the original game that is made purely to torture the players. That's the only reason why it exists. And that's kind of the dungeon that everyone's like, do not make a dungeon like that, because it's not a good experience. So that then takes us to Stranger Things. Now that we have an understanding for a dungeon crawl, the dungeon crawl is meant to give everyone a chance to basically have this experience together as friends, even though we know it's going to be really, really rough to go to some ancient, old, forbidden site and slog it out and try not to die. And you hope that at the end, the reward is enough to be worth all of the effort. So for Stranger Things, season 5, if you don't know what's going on, Vecna at the end of season 4 effectively won, managing to manifest himself completely in our realm of reality, connecting Earth to the Upside Down. And even though his sacrifice was ultimate, even though his ritualistic sacrifices were ultimately halted by the kids, it doesn't matter because that connection's been made. So long as that connection's been made, he doesn't have to worry about doing any more weird rituals in order to get himself back to Earth to continue his plans for just conquering and murdering everyone and everything. Why? Because he's a mustache twirling villain. So that's where season 4 ends. Season 5 with a massive info dump, which was fun to listen to, but I will be honest, as a writer, I was like, no, God, no. Like, yeah, it's kind of funny because, again, I will admit I enjoyed it, but my writing sensibilities were all like, that's such an info dump. And I appreciate the fact that you guys decided to make it fun by having Robin and Steve take over a radio station and basically use the radio station to pass along cryptic messages. That was cool, but it was still an info dump. Oh, info dumps are always hard, and sometimes you just have to info dump. It's like when you got to go to the bathroom. Sometimes it's just going to be messy, but in any case, so we get thanks to the info dump, the knowledge of how the town of Hawkins has been taken over by the military. Everyone's under quarantine, and the military is trying to figure out what is going on in the Upside Down, and they're routinely going in and burning their way through it, trying to get rid of just all of this alien growth and deal with whatever alien monstrosities they come across. But because they are going on this burning campaign through the Upside Down, that provides an opportunity for the heroes to actually sneak on in, or in this case, particularly Hopper, and and go on a search for Vecna, because they're not sure if Vecna is actually dead or not. They're not sure how well they actually managed to defeat him at the end of season 4. And so the dungeon crawls, effectively, Hopper, you get to go in by yourself, trailing after the military, and everyone else has certain jobs that they're supposed to perform in order to make sure that they can keep track of Hopper, be in radio contact with him, so that way they can help guide him through the Upside Down. They can pick him up when they need to. And it is a really neat setup in terms of how everyone has to work together. The thing is that by dungeon crawling standards for D&D, is you don't really ever want to split the party for a dungeon crawl. That is just a recipe for disaster. And so that's one of the things that made me just kind of like a little Like, I like what you're doing. I actually really do like the setup, how everyone has a job, how they all have to work together, that they are sweeping the town of Hawkins trying to find Vecna by doing effectively a dungeon crawl. It's all really good, but they broke the number one rule, which is you never split the party, especially for a dungeon crawl. And so, yeah, that was a wee bit annoying. But it made me think, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do a topic for a live stream about dungeon crawling, is because, okay, so Stranger Things set up a dungeon crawl. They even call it The Crawl, based on dungeon crawling. They even have 2 separate scenes of explaining why it's called a dungeon crawl and what you do in a dungeon crawl. All good stuff. As a D&D player, I absolutely appreciated that. But I'm like, you could have, though, represented what a dungeon crawl is like so much better. Because when I was talking with one of my sisters about it, she was like, I don't understand, actually. Like, even though the explanation is in the show, the concept of what a dungeon crawl really is and why they were making such a big deal about it was something that just didn't quite register, because it was hard to separate what do they mean by it in terms of the game versus in terms of the show. And so it got me thinking, what are some movies or some books that actually do dungeon crawls really well? And so I want to take kind of what I want to take then again those expectations of what a good dungeon crawl is in D&D and apply that to movies, shows, and books that have actually done dungeon crawling really well. And you'll be surprised that almost all of those examples I'm going to bring up have absolutely nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. And yet, if you understand the principles behind a dungeon crawl, you understand why these scenes or moments work really, really well in other stories. Are you doing okay? Everybody sounds like you got a bad cough there. Oh, I do. I've got this horrible residual cough from when I got sick during Christmas. It's just going to hang around now for about the next month or so, maybe 2 months. I call it the eternal cough. Happens every winter. It just came way sooner than usual this year because I got sick during Christmas. Stormcrow says, do not want to crap on my GM. We have tons of fun with him, but for my table, if I ever do stuff like that, I'm keeping notes and plans in advance. The players will mess them up, but I'll do it. Oh yeah, as the Dungeon Master, you always have to be ready for all of your plans to go out the window. That's just an absolute given. But yeah, I mean, and here's the thing. Just because a Dungeon Master who wants to play a Vecna campaign doesn't keep notes, doesn't have a long plan, doesn't have a long game plan in mind, that doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It just means that they're probably not the right person to play a Vecna campaign with. So again, that's just that. Those are my thoughts. Fire Fun Time says, interestingly, the episode 7 trailer for The Amazing Digital Circus seems to be one of the best ones in terms of views. So I think why episode 7 is not doing the best with views is because the actual contents of the episode, including just dwindling numbers over time with everything. Well, an interesting thing is that with The Amazing Digital Circus, it's actually kind of beaten that trend. If you go back to all of the episodes where they currently stand, episode 1, obviously, the pilot episode has, I think right now, like 400 million views. Super, super well watched. And usually the pilot does get the most views. The next episode is almost half. Still ridiculously a high number, but okay. It's following the usual trend. Episode 3 also follows that trend of having fewer views. Then episode 4 rocketed up and went way beyond episode 3. And then episodes 5 and 6 have very, very strong holdings. Maybe they're not as high as episode 4, but they're very strong in terms of retention of the original audience count, which was around 200 million at the time that they started getting going. They're looking at a nearly 50% retention rate. That, in terms of a show, is insane. Now, when we then think about the newest episode, maybe it is the content that prevent people from coming back and rewatching it again and again and again. Or maybe there's some other factors. We just don't know. It'd be very, very interesting to be able to get a massive poll of viewers of the show and see what they thought. Because I can only go off of what the available numbers are and what the established trends are within Hollywood, and just apply that mentality and statistics over to how the indie show is doing, which isn't always fair because indie is indie. But for The Amazing Digital Circus, because it's been doing so well, it actually fits the mold, and in many ways also helps to supersede the usual. I did notice that a lot of people got sick on Christmas. Half the people I work with were sick. Yeah, there was a really crazy just bout of the flu that swept all over the place. Not just in my city, but like in many cities and in many states. The flu hit hard. So it just an unexpected weird wave of sickness. Hopefully it didn't ruin your Christmas. So, coming back to the idea of dungeon crawling and everything, I get what Stranger Things was doing with how they're like, ooh, we're going into a dungeon crawl. It's not exactly fun. It's a slog. We have to use up resources. Everyone has to work together as a team. All of that made good sense. I like the logic behind it and how it was all executed, even though I'm not a huge fan of splitting up the party for a dungeon crawl scenario. But like looking back at it, as fun as it is, the problem is because they split up the party, a lot of the drama just just couldn't be there. There was a potential for so much more, which unfortunately they just didn't get into. And I'm glad he didn't get sick. So I'm too good for that. I'm too good to get sick. Take that, the rest of you suckers. So, thinking about what a dungeon crawl again ought to be, it's a slog, but it's a slog with friends. Let me tell you guys already one of the movies that's got maybe the best dungeon crawl. If not the best, it's one of the best. And it's a story that has nothing to do with Dungeons and Dragons. It's The Goonies. The Goonies is 100% a dungeon crawl story. You've got Mikey and the gang. Hey, and I mean, Sean Astin was also in Stranger Things. Oh, ho, ho. Until they killed him off. Anyways, The Goonies has got one of the best dungeon crawls of all time. You got Mikey and the gang looking for treasure and going into this cave under the Fratelli's very, very questionable bar that they're hiding out at. And once you get going, you've got the traps of the boulders coming in from the top. You've got the bone organ, which if you play the wrong notes kills you. You need to have the map in order to get the right notes. There's also then the trap that leads you down to a spiked pit, and crazily enough, that spiked pit trap is the only way also to proceed. And so it's actually a really dastardly trap on the part of the pirates, where it's like, if you want to get at our treasure, you gotta sacrifice someone, yarg. And it's thanks to a person like Data with his gadgets that they're able to survive. Data goes through almost all of his gadgets in order to help the team out. Mikey with his rallying speeches and with his belief in One-Eyed Willie is able to lead the party. Brad with his muscle. Mouth is basically the bard, giving inspiration and frustration to everyone along the way. You get the dungeon crawling experience. The kids get angry at each other. They turn on each other at actually on 2 different occasions before making up. You literally have a kiss and make up scene. So we get also a little bit of the romantic tension and drama. Though the funny thing is that what's her face actually isn't kissing Brad, but ends up kissing Mikey by mistake. So you've got all of that stuff going on in an ancient space in order to get treasure. And the rewards at the end are absolutely worth it. They have enough treasure to save the Goondocks in order to save their town from the wily real estate people who wish to just make another golf course out of their homes. Hopefully they would have made it a miniature golf course if they had succeeded, but good thing that they didn't, and we'll never know. Because the Goonies managed to at least get some treasure thanks to Mikey scooping a bunch of gems into his marble bag. So you get all of that. You get the adventure, you've got the friends, you've got the camaraderie, you've got the rich stuff. And so the Goonies, solid dungeon crawling movie, with most of the movie being the dungeon crawl. If you want another good dungeon crawling experience, allow me to toot my own horn. You can read The Monarch Mercenaries. The end adventure that the Monarch Mercenaries go on is a raid of this ancient temple that has tons of various traps. And as far as they know, they don't know how to get to the treasure at the center of this temple that they're supposed to raid. So they're just kind of going at random, just seeing where things go. And so you've got the typical trap from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where you step on the wrong tile and then darts start flying. And one of my characters is all like, "Oh, screw this," pulls out a massive 50 cal machine gun and just starts ripping up the place, just shooting all of the tiles, setting off all the traps. And it's like, okay, no, that we did that, and just marched through without a problem. The next trap that they get to is a winding staircase that leads further down into the temple. And the further you go down the staircase, and the faster you go, the faster it activates a really devious, strange trap where a kind of shadow monster oozes down out of the ceiling and then begins chasing you. And once you've kind of crossed a certain threshold, a point of no return, there's no way that you can go back up without running into the monster. And so you're forced to continue going down or to go off into another room which it might be full of more traps. And so they're all like, oh crud, running. And they're like, we're going to get caught by this thing. And so the captain's like, screw this, grabs everyone and just jumps and just falls and hopes to then use falling speed, inertia, to outrun the monster, which is the right move to make. And then one of the other traps within the temple is actually how, again, kind of like with the spiked pit in the Goonies, if you wish to proceed to the treasure, you have to sacrifice someone. The way to get to the treasure of the temple is you actually have to go up against a massive boulder that has all of these carvings on it. And the carvings empower this boulder to chase the treasure hunters around the temple and just smash them, roll them over and kill them. And so they're just in a really bad, sucky position. What they have to find out is that in order to proceed to the treasure, you kind of have to actually accept the massive boulder and find its one magical window. That in the carvings, there's a lion with an open mouth, and they have to jump into the carving of the open mouth, and that magically transports them then into the treasure room. So that's all stuff they have to deal with. I am not going to spoil them what they do later on with that boulder, because it was a moment that I actually hadn't planned originally. But when I was done with the first draft and I was like, this sucks, and I had to rewrite the entire story, I realized, oh boy, if you have a bunch of space pirates with a magical boulder that chases you around trying to smash you, what can you do with this? Especially because other pirates then come in and try to take the treasure away from them. And I'm like, oh, if you have a bunch of scrappy space pirates and a magical boulder, all kinds of horrible possibilities are open to you. And that's what I rolled with. I says, I'm watching the Elden Ring gameplay. Lars took the lava slide into the volcano. Yeah, that was not one of my finer moments while playing this. I didn't even mean to make that jump. I just accidentally hit the wrong button and went, whoop, there I went. So I have to then go and get my runes back. Such a pain. The lava, and thinking of dungeon crawls, the Volcano Manor is easily one of the most brutal dungeon crawls of Elden Ring. There's some other fantastic dungeon crawls, but Volcano Manor is definitely one of those ones you're like, ah, yes, so brutal, so painful, but the reward is great because you get to kill Praetor Rykard at the end in a really cool cinematic way. And you also get lots of runes out of it. So it's worth it. It's worth it for the treasure and for the experience. So yeah, the Goonies is really good. And again, the Monarch Mercenaries is another good example of a dungeon crawl, if I do say so myself. And because I've already brought it on up, one of the really good dungeon crawls out there in cinema is Raiders of the Lost Ark. And this one in casual self glaze. Oh yeah, absolutely. Glaze my donut. Oh, that could be taken the wrong way. We will move on from that. Raiders of the Lost Ark has an absolutely great dungeon crawl to it at the very beginning when they're going into this ancient Mesoamerican temple to get the little golden statue. And what you actually get along the way there with that particular dungeon crawl is not just, oh, yay, the fun experiences with friends, but you quickly find out who all of the other, like, you quickly find out that Indy doesn't really have any good friends in this particular party. Everyone either abandons him or betrays him along the way. It's a very brutal dungeon crawl to suffer through four separate traps. You've got the spikes that come out of the wall. You have the pit. You have the room with all of the darts, and then you have the boulder afterwards. So pretty grueling, but hey, for this awesome golden treasure, which then gets stolen from him by Belloc after going through all of that. It's such a rough dungeon crawl, and you can just feel how unfair it is. You're like, Indy, I want you to succeed, man. I want you to succeed. Oh man, poor Indiana Jones. Funny thing is this: if you go back and watch through all the Indiana Jones movies, all of these amazing treasures that he goes for, he is almost never rewarded for any of the work he goes through, other than good feelings. You either get the girl or you reunite with your dad. Don't you just feel better? Now, yes, first movie, Raiders of the Lost Ark, he does manage to get the Ark of the Covenant to the American government, and hopefully he got an excellent payday for that. But he doesn't actually. But no one in the government takes him seriously when he tries to let them know that they have the real McCoy on their hands. And oh man, the frustration that comes with that. Fire Fun Time says, it seems that with the way things are going, 2027 will be the year for Gaslight District in Knights of Guinevere, because it's foggy what's really going to happen this year, but the Amazing Digital Circus takes up a decent chunk of the year. Oh, absolutely, because they're going to finish the Amazing Digital Circus this year, which great run for them. The Amazing Digital Circus has had an absolutely great run, and I hope it goes out with a phenomenal high note as well, as deserved of a show that's been so beloved and been an absolute massive milestone for indie animation, and the means by which indie animation has been able to start changing the scene in Hollywood for the better. And I intend to make actually a series of videos breaking that down for the beginning of this year. The state of where the entertainment industry is right now, or the state of the storytelling industry right now. As of the beginning of 2026, end of 2025, it's honestly in a bad place. And yet, despite it being in such a bad place, it is primed for a revolution of storytelling, which could lead to amazing things. Glitch Productions is kind of at the forefront of that, but the playing field is even more open to really all of us. And that's something that I really want to try to get out there, because it's so important. It's not just Glitch, which is taking the helm and doing amazing stuff. It's really all of us have an excellent opportunity. So, series of videos to look for in the future. But so there you have some good examples of a good dungeon crawl with Raiders of the Lost Ark, Monarch Mercenaries, The Goonies. And again, it all comes down to being together with friends, working things together. It is an experience that you hope you will be highly rewarded with treasures that you get at the end of your journey, or it's just an absolute horrifying slog that that doesn't leave anyone feeling good at the end. And maybe that's one of the issues with the end of episode 2 of Stranger Things season 5, is that the dungeon crawl results in 11 getting stuck in the Upside Down with Hopper, them finding out about Holly being taken. They get to the massive flesh wall that Vecna has put up to prevent anyone from coming after him. Steve and oh crud, the older buyer's brother. Why am I suddenly forgetting his name? Will's older brother. They actually have an important connecting moment, which is all good. But the thing is that when they finally get the revelation, very important revelation, that Vecna's after Holly, and there's this flesh wall preventing us from getting through, which is a very critical revelation leading forward to whatever's going to happen next within the season. Was it a dungeon crawl though that was really a rewarding experience for the characters and especially for the audience? Because, and comes back to what I was saying earlier with how if you really want to feel what a bad dungeon crawl is like, go and watch some of the dungeon crawls from Critical Role. Because even though Critical Role is a blast to watch, the problem is that some of the dungeon crawls are just so exhausting. And you really have to think at the end, what was even accomplished by this? What did the characters get out of it? And as the viewer, you're all like, I just feel exhausted because we've been through so much. And I just want us to get out of there and get back to fun shenaniganery. And I feel like that's kind of the way that maybe a lot of people felt after episode 2 of season 5. You're like, okay, we learned a lot of stuff, but it didn't feel fun. And while a dungeon crawl isn't implicitly fun, it is what people make of it. And maybe that is where Stranger Things season 5 unfortunately falls apart or starts falling apart for people. So by the end of episode 2, again, thinking about it critically from a Dungeons and Dragons and writing perspective, you're left kind of wondering, other than the revelations that we get, was it really worth it? Might there have been a better way to go about it? And I argue that there probably was ultimately a better way to pull off the dungeon crawl that would have been very rewarding to the characters as well as to the audience, while still conveying just how hard this is and the sacrifices involved in everything. You can still have Holly getting kidnapped, and what happens to Mike's parents and everything. All of that can still happen and work very well with the crawl experience. So that'll be something I'll have to revisit. If I do a video on how Stranger Things season 5 turned out, maybe that's going to be one of my discussion points. As it says, what do you think of the Darklands in Troll Hunters as a dungeon crawl? Because I haven't seen Troll Hunters, I unfortunately can't say. I know I've had a lot of people say that I should watch Troll Hunters, so at some point in time, I'll have to make the time to watch it. Fire Fun Time says, I do feel, though, since The Amazing Digital Circus will be out of the spotlight, kind of with its ending, that Gaslight District Knights of Guinevere will have no chance but to gain more views with no TADC in glitches presenting plans. Let me see if I understand that right here. I do feel, though, since the Amazing Digital Circus will be out of the spotlight, its ending, that Gaslight District Knights of Guinevere will have no choice but to gain more views. So that's very true. The Gaslight District and Knights of Guinevere will absolutely have to earn their keep moving forward, because they can't always bank on the Amazing Digital Circus to bail them out. However, that being said, and if there's any good hope for Knights of Guinevere, it's that Murder Drones continues to remain so popular, because Murder Drones continues to sell merch. And because it continues to sell merch and still gets good views, despite it already being done, that means that there's a backdoor of revenue coming in to Glitch that they can put towards their other projects. So the Amazing Digital Circus, even when it ends, will probably still provide a good reliable moneymaker to Glitch Productions that will allow them to supplement whatever they need to put into Knights of Guinevere and Gaslight District to keep the shows up and running. That's very likely what the business model will be going forward until Glitch can reliably have another big hit, which you can never plan for what that would be. I would have thought that Knights of Guinevere would absolutely have killed it by now, but it didn't, which is a little bit sad, but it probably comes down to what the nature of the show is. It's very dark. It's not one that is easily recommended to a wide audience. Even though, yes, the Amazing Digital Circus and Murder Drones also get pretty dark and demented, they, either because of their fun colors and jokes or just the fun edginess that they've got, become very easy and very easily palatable and recommendable to a larger audience. So I think that Gaslight District also falls into that same realm as Knights of Guinevere. So I think that Glitch Productions is going to have to rely on probably a little bit more of a fun operation going forward. Because of their deal with Lackadaisy, Lackadaisy will probably end up being another one of those options that they can kind of bank a little bit on going forward. But they're going to need to find a third show that can recapture the fan ardor that Murder Drones and the Amazing Digital Circus were able to command. So, and that's difficult. That kind of takes us into the realm of publishing, where publishers would love to tell all different kinds of stories, but publishing companies need to make money. Without making money, they cannot survive. They cannot do what they want to do. So they need to have bankable projects. This is one of the reasons why I laid into George R. R. Martin and into Patrick Rothfuss in a video, because I was like, these guys are the cash cows for their publishers. If their publishers cannot sell their books because they're not writing them, that not only hurts the publishers, but it hurts all the other storytellers that the publishers are working with. And so for Glitch moving forward into the future, they are going to have to basically do what publishers do. They're going to be like, okay, then we're empowering Part-Time Seagull and Dana Terrace to tell their stories. We understand that they're not the big money makers that they hope that they would be, but we like their stories. We like the creators. We like the fans. Awesome. We want to do everything we can to keep them, but we need another big money maker. Okay, of all the other creators out there, who do we think has a story that could be the next big money maker, and that specific creator has the mentality and the skill necessary to be the next show-running moneymaker? So that's the position that Glitch is going to find themselves in very soon. Troll Hunters is pretty good until the movie. Well, good to know. I will brace myself for the movie whenever I get around to the show. All right. So there you had it. There's been my long diatribe of dungeon crawls. Again, think about, like, if you yourself, especially Isa, since I know you said you're looking for inspiration, what I would suggest for anyone who wishes to utilize a dungeon crawl, which again, all of the stories that I've mentioned that I think have excellent dungeon crawls have nothing to do with D&D. Rather, instead, they use the principles of a dungeon crawl to create a good dungeon crawl experience. What a good dungeon crawl must have is it must have an understanding between everyone involved that this is going to be difficult. This is going to be rough. So we're going to make the best of it that we can. And then the dungeon master brings really good encounters in terms of monsters to fight, puzzles to solve, traps to try to avoid. That is all put in. Oh, wait a second. Why have I not mentioned this one? Ooh, here's another great dungeon crawling story. Delicious in Dungeon. So good. Such a good show. What you need to do, again, have that understanding between everyone involved, have good encounters, and then everyone needs to be able to contribute. So as a writer who wishes to create a dungeon crawl experience, whether it is in a D&D style story or like in any other kind of adventure story, you need to already set up for your readers. This is the kind of story that I'm doing here. Whatever adventure that they're going to go on, whether it be like we must claim the magical relic, or we must find the dragon's treasure at the bottom of this crazy inverted palace, or we are going to go to the underground city to fight the evil wizard, or we're just going to go and find pirate treasure, and there's probably going to be traps involved. You need to establish that there are dangers involved in this. And you can actually think about, for instance, the Goonies. The Goonies establishes really well the dangers involved when they talk about how One-Eyed Willie killed all of his men, how he had murdered so many people and taken all of his treasure, and that in order to protect that treasure, he had killed his own crew, and he had created all of these traps and everything. And so the Goonies already firmly establishes, oh, get ready for all of these things to happen. The kids are going to go into a very dangerous situation. And that's even heralded by the opening scene of the movie, which doesn't even introduce you immediately to the kids, but to the villains, the Fratellis. And so if you're paying attention, the story is already letting you know what kind of a journey you're getting yourself into. But then once the kids actually get to the Fratellis and start going down into the pirate tunnels, that's where we get to see the camaraderie come out. Everyone's got their own special skills, which everyone needs to bring their skills and knowledge together in order to survive. They work together and they create funny, endearing, romantic, tense, action-packed moments all throughout their adventure that keep the audience engaged. And then when they finally get through to it all and finally get to the treasure, it's glorious. It's beautiful. It's everything they ever wanted and more. And despite the fact that the Fratellis steal most of it and they lose it and they have to then leave, they still end up having enough treasure at the end to save the Goondocks. And so it was all worth it. And that's what you need to think about. Okay, I need to establish, again, this is going to be hard. Delicious in Dungeon does this. Delicious in Dungeon opens up with the main character's sister getting killed and eaten by a dragon. And it's very quickly established that people die in this dungeon. There is a way to resurrect people, though, but it's very difficult. You have to act fast and bring their corpse back as soon as possible. Otherwise, they're gone for good. So we are now dealing with a timeline. So it's going to be anxious, tense, somewhat fast-paced. Even if the episodes individually might feel like it takes a while, there's a ticking time clock. There's a ticking time bomb, a proverbial ticking time bomb for the whole story. And you can feel that through the conversations that the characters have. And there's tons of monsters, tons of traps in every single episode, death around every corner. So it's a slog, but it's made it worth it by all of the hilarious interactions between the characters, their heartfelt moments, the cooking lessons you get along the way, the things that they learn about each other. That's what you want to do. You want to have this very full adventure experience with a wide variety of experiences that the characters themselves go through and that the readers, by proxy, get to go through by reading your story. That's what you're aiming to do with a dungeon crawl. Hey, I'm Omega's here. Great to have you here, I'm Omega. What about Deltarune? I know it's not a proper dungeon, but the three heroes are a party looking for a MacGuffin, the Dark Fountains. So, I'm Omega. I will actually say this, is that Deltarune does have its own dungeon crawling experiences. Chapter 2, for instance, with Queen's Castle, is effectively a dungeon. It's a full-on dungeon crawl, combined with the secret boss, with being spammed in, the whole quest there to make that happen. So, and of course you've got the shipping moments in that castle. You've got some fun, wacky hijinks, some great jokes, some dark hints and reveals. Everything to do with Spamton is pretty ominous. We get a little glimpse of the lore into the Roaring Night, and a wink and plenty of winks and nods towards Des, who has yet to show up at that point. But we're already being promised, yeah, she's going to be a thing. This is going to be important. And so there's a whole lot going on. It's a very fulfilling dungeon crawl experience in Deltarune. So again, I would argue that Deltarune absolutely has a dungeon crawl experience, especially in Chapter 2. And you can argue, at least by D&D mechanics, that Chapters 3 and 4 are absolutely full-on dungeon crawling experiences. Chapter 3 is such a railroad. Holy cow. And Chapter 4's Dark World is a phenomenal dungeon setup. It's really, really good. I know I've shared some scenes from my story Shadowbound with you before, but I've done a lot of revisions since then. This is helping me develop both the world and the story a lot more. Well, excellent. I'm happy I can help. At least help give you some inspiration, and then the rest is all up to you. And I trust that you're going to do amazing things with Shadowbound, ISO. So those are all of my thoughts and everything on the dungeon crawl. And now I realize there's so much more still to say. More videos to make in the future. I'm going to enjoy it. Now then, let's shift gears and wrap up last week's live stream discussion, which was about which Disney animated opening is arguably the best. Now, I've already made my video breaking everything down about Aladdin, why I think Aladdin arguably has the best opening. And again, Beauty and the Beast is my personal favorite. And I think that a movie, for instance, like The Hunchback of Notre Dame is strong and solid, one of the best. One of the best emotion grabbers is also The Lion King. But from a technical breakdown of what an opening needs to do, Aladdin does it. And not only does it once, but it does it 3 times with a seamless connection between 3 separate, distinct scenes that need to be together. Otherwise, they lose their narrative strength. And that is honestly difficult to pull off. And writers, for instance, like Brandon Sanderson, talked about how for The Way of Kings, he cheated by getting 3 bites at the apple: an introduction to the heralds, an introduction to Seth, the assassin in white, and then an introduction to Kaladin. And basically, he does 2 separate introductions to Kaladin. And he's like, yeah, my publishers and editors really didn't like me for that. But he's like, I wanted to do it. I thought it was so cool and cinematic. Aladdin did it first, and Aladdin, I argue, actually did it better. I Omega asks, any progress on No Evil, the series? I know you're still busy, but I just wanted to check in case. I'm Omega. I had intended to finish No Evil during my Christmas break, but oh my gosh, Christmas was way busier than I had expected. And so, unfortunately, I haven't made much progress. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to go back and restart the whole series and just say, screw it. We're doing this. We are doing this. Make the time and just begin again start from the beginning and go on to the end. So that way I can get the full experience and just have the whole story and not just in chunks. Now, what that means is I need to, like I said, set aside the time. With the holiday reset and feeling the energy that I am now, what I've been doing is I've been trying to aim for writing 2,000 words a day, which is going to hopefully help me get back into a very healthy writing regimen. Balancing, of course, time with family, friends, part-time work, as well as doing stuff with YouTube means lots and lots of juggling going on. But by not trying to shoot for more than 2,000 words a day so far, that means that I've actually opened up more time for myself. I've also been trying to cut out things that I knew I did as just kind of fun little time wasters. And that has also been very rewarding as I've kind of gone through my schedule and been trying to pick out things. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't need this. I don't need this. I don't need to do that. And I'm still working on trying to find where I can be better and use my time more effectively. And as I rearrange my schedule more, I'll be in a better position to finally, again, knuckle down and just rewatch the episodes of No Evil that I have and then continue on to the end because I do want to watch it. all in its entirety, and finally have the conversations that ought to be had about it. Now, have you seen Twisted by Star Kid? It's hysterical for Aladdin fans. I haven't seen Twisted, so unfortunately I can't say anything about it. But thanks for the recommendation. Now then, because I've got Aladdin going on right here, let's just quickly see let's have a look at oh my gosh. Wait a second here. YouTube doing weird things. YouTube just began unsubscribing people again from me. I just popped on over to just have a look at what the poll is saying that I posted earlier today, and I'm like, what the? Oh, there went the subs. Oh well. Curse you, YouTube. Curse you and your algorithm nonsense. All right, so thus far, looking at the poll, not as many people have voted on this poll so far as with the other polls I put up, but out of 11 people who have voted, 10 people agree with me on that. Yeah, Aladdin objectively has the best Disney animated opening. Now, if people don't agree with me, I actually really, really, really do want to hear your thoughts and opinions, your breakdown, an explanation for why it isn't and why maybe another movie does have the better opening. And not necessarily because it's your favorite, but objectively speaking. The reason that I put out that particular challenge is because I really do want to hear what kinds of arguments are out there. If I miss something, I want to know. If someone has a better argument, I want to hear it, because by hearing it, maybe my opinion will be changed. Maybe my analysis will change. Maybe there's something I haven't considered. By getting good feedback from other people, it helps me learn and grow. And that's something that, if there's any writing advice to take out of this particular discussion of, well, what is the best Disney animated opening? I mean, we can talk until we're blue in the face about all the things that go into a great opening, but it's the feedback. Like when you have a discussion like this, you need to be open to what other people have to say. And so I'm looking forward to what, if anyone else will push back and say, hey, look, no, Aladdin has a great opening, but I don't think it's the best. Let me give you my reasoning. And looking at it, I might be like, you actually may bring up a really excellent point. And because of that, I might be able to actually turn that then into insights and advice that will help improve my writing. So that is why you need to be open to feedback. And that's honestly why these kinds of conversations, I believe, are very valuable to writers. So with that all being said, let's then turn our attention to the final topic of the evening, which is Avatar: Fire and Ash. Now, I would absolutely love to show up all kinds of footage from the movie, but Disney and 20th Century Fox, or I guess in this case now they call it Searchlight, are absolute pains in the rear to deal with when it comes to copyright. And I've already learned from previous attempts that trying to show anything from Avatar is going to get this stream flagged, which I don't want to do. So we're going to stick with the Elden Ring footage for right now. So, Avatar: Fire and Ash. My review, almost a month later. Did they rebrand? Yes, I'm Omega. They rebranded. Disney forced them to rebrand because Disney wants to very clearly put everything under their umbrella, under their control, and everyone loses their autonomy under them. It's just sucky. So, Avatar: Fire and Ash. Oh boy. Let me say this. In the moment while watching it, it was fun. And it was also fun because of the people I was watching it with. And it was also fun because I allowed myself to make fun of certain scenes as we were going along. Now, that also being said, there's some stuff that I absolutely thought, that's amazing. The sky-faring Navi, very awesome concept. I loved how it was executed. I have more to say about that though. The Ash Riders, I thought was a really interesting concept for villains. It reminded me a lot of of how people viewed the Apache and the Comanche, and I feel like James Cameron could really have leaned into that. I like that the whales stopped being pacifists. That's one of the stupidest things that James Cameron ever came up with. And I like that Neytiri stopped being insanely feral. Those are all good things. And Jake Sully finally learned to man up and actually try to be a warrior and a dad, as opposed to what he was in the second movie, which is just embarrassing. So, improvements, things I liked. Now, the movie for me could have been really, really great, but it honestly suffered because the second movie exists. And James Cameron's like, but I must stay true to the second movie. It's my masterpiece. Oh, James Cameron, James Cameron, James Cameron. Okay, allow me to very quickly lay out why the second movie is just an absolute mess and why it ends up dragging down the third movie. Second movie. Absolute destruction of the characters, a twisting of the plot. None of anything that happened in the second movie ever had to happen. For two reasons. Number one, the humans could have won in the very opening scene of the movie by simply landing their ship right on top of the Na'vi village. Had they done that, boom, movie ended, humans win, Pandora is conquered. That would have ended everything. But no, the humans don't do that because the humans are stupid. The second thing, Jake Sully threw out all of his character development so that way he could turn into a coward and flee from Quaritch and go out to Polynesian Na'vi land. Neytiri threw out all character development to follow her husband out to Polynesian land. And everyone acts stupid in order to necessitate that Jake and Neytiri will take their family to Polynesian land. Now, I wouldn't mind Polynesian land, other than that James Cameron absolutely disrespected the Polynesian natives by never exploring what the Na'vi in a Polynesian setting might actually be like. Compared to the first movie, where we actually learned some interesting things about the Na'vi, that is critical to Jake Sully's growth and why he ends up falling for Neytiri and why he decides to become one of the people. Second movie, none of that. None of the water tribe's culture ever comes through, except for we make tattoo ink for our whale brothers and sisters who drop by once a year so they can tell us gossip, and we gossip together while we give each other tattoos. That is literally the only reason why the water tribe exists. They have nothing else to do with their lives, because James Cameron broke the rules to his own planet to ensure that the water tribe of Na'vi literally lived in a paradise that provided them with everything they could ever want. Therefore, there's no reason for them to ever progress. So therefore, they have no culture. They have no aspiration. They literally just exist to give tattoos to whales. And it's just so dumb. And then these stupid pacifist whales. For crying out loud, if these whales are so intelligent that they have devised a complex society, these whales are smart enough to realize that they live in oceans with alien megalodons, big enough to eat them, despite the fact that they've got special armor. This is proven in the second movie. So these dumb whales are like, we're pacifists. We'll let our children get eaten by megalodons. Oh, and then when one whale tries to save our calves, we will exile him and say bad things about him behind his back because he dared to protect our children from megalodons. And it's even dumber than the way I just presented it in the movie. And what's made even dumber is the fact that James Cameron doubles and triples down on this in the third movie, eating up precious runtime with a stupid concept that finally goes out the window when the whales are all like, you mean to tell us that these humans have been killing us for our brain fluids? Something that we knew since the beginning of the second movie? Is so insanely dumb. And the thing is this, the reason why I complain about this is because James Cameron has proven he's a better writer than this. James Cameron literally phoned it in order to create a scenario for himself to force Jake Sully and family to fight for the whales so that way he could promote his protect the oceans agenda. Which, you know what? I say protect the oceans. Because the oceans are absolutely essential to our way of life. We need to protect them. We need to do everything that we can to save them. For crying out loud, I work at a place which is right now trying to find a way to revive the Great Barrier Reef. So, I'm all okay with that. You know what? If you're going to give such an important message to the masses, you might as well try to do it in a smart way, James Cameron. Also, oh my gosh, this stupid whale brain fluid, which makes you immortal. How do these people even know it makes you immortal? They haven't even known Pandora long enough to realize that, oh, this stuff makes you immortal should you drink it. Also, apparently deflation happened because immortality now only costs like a mere $1 billion, because when the whalers are like, out there's $100 billion, we are going to get it, ha ha, by killing all these whales. And I'm like, okay, slow your rolls a little bit right here. Right now, the current AI industry, which has even less value to humanity than magical whale brain fluid, is in value of trillions of dollars. You mean to tell me that the key to immortality is only worth like a mere billion? Like, that makes no sense. James Cameron doesn't know how money works. He doesn't know how economies work. Again, he was so obsessed with the idea of his perfect Polynesian paradise and protect the oceans that he sacrificed good storytelling. It's so insanely dumb. And basically what he wanted to do, because he knew, he promised for the second movie that the second movie's end battle scene would be even bigger than the first. It wasn't. It sucked. And so in order to make good on his promise, he basically redoes the second battle. The second movie's end battle scene, he reenacts it using and literally reusing footage from the first movie to basically mash the first movie and the second movie's big ending scenes together to make this one huge battle. And he's like, oh, you know what we're also going to add to that? A special magical gravity pillar that connects Pandora to the other moons as they unite, thereby releasing the Titans. Unfortunately, it doesn't release the Titans. If he released the Titans, it would have salvaged the freaking ending to the movie. It's so dumb. And again, he literally reused footage from the first movie to make the end battle scene of the third, while reenacting the second movie's end battle, which was still dumb. Oh, it was so dumb. It was so painful to watch the third movie's ending battle. I was like, no, none of this works. None of this works. All of this is stupid. It's just, yeah. So I says, hey, first time this year, Lars is crashing out over the second Avatar movie. This is a very promising year. Lars's goofy impression was not on my bingo card for tonight. And does James Cameron really think people are stupid enough not to notice reused footage? I think he does think people are that stupid. It was blatant. It was flagrant. And he did it multiple times. Oh my gosh. I was just like, I was legitimately appalled. Also, fun fact, he retconned the megalodons. They never show up again because I think he realized that you couldn't have pacifist whales with giant alien sharks that could eat them, because no creature in the world, like, think our world. If you study anything about whales or elephants, these magnificent creatures are highly intelligent. Whales and elephants put humans to awe with what they can do, with what they know. They're magnificent creatures. Even whales and elephants will fight to protect their children. They will go on rampages to protect themselves. These are smart creatures, but they also know that it's better to survive than to be like, oh, no, because we're so smart, because we're so big, obviously nothing can take us on. Yeah, no, it doesn't work that way. Oh my gosh. And so James Cameron thereby removed one of his big monsters in order to facilitate his stupid pacifist whales in the third movie. So he retconned his own series in order to ensure that he could have his pacifist whales, which are dumb because they're not needed. They're dumb because it doesn't add anything to the story, and it's dumb because it's cheap tension that was never earned because it was a dumb, contrived setup to begin with. And he just doubles and triples down on it in the third movie. And so even though there are things that I liked about the third movie, it's just like, no, it's overshadowed by all the dumb stuff you did in the second movie that you refuse to try to fix. And then, even though I love the idea of the Ash Riders, they're squandered. They're absolutely squandered. James Cameron, what he really, really wanted is he really, really wanted the dog boys from Mad Max Fury Road without actually doing Fury Road work to get the dog boys. As a result, you just have these really psychotic, absolutely one-dimensional Na'vi characters who could have been very interesting. He could have explored the culture of the Comanche and the Apache, of tribes, very powerful tribes that were actually booted from their original homelands by devastations, by wars, by disease, or by stronger tribes. And when they left and went somewhere else, they became the conquerors of these other lands. That would have been a very interesting story to depict. And it would have been very well in line with the Plains Indians and the Indians of the American Southwest, and could have provided some interesting commentary. There's a lot of interesting stuff that he could have done with the Ash Riders, which in the end he didn't do. He did the most surface level stuff and patted himself on the back. And so even though I like the Ash Riders, they're just shallow, one-dimensional, and that's disappointing. He still did not build on any of the culture to the Water Tribe. As a result, they just still continue to remain bland. I didn't care about them. I literally could have cared more figs for anything else in the story, which is awful because they had so much potential. And again, he never tapped into it. James Cameron failed his own story. And so, okay, so now we have an Avatar movie with the Water Tribe and the Fire Nation and the Earth Kingdom. Yeah, all we need now, actually, and we've been introduced to the Airbenders in this movie, and oh my gosh, I loved this concept. It did not work for this movie. So the Na'vi, who are the basically the Airbenders, the people who travel around with these really cool ships with magical cuttlefish that fly through the air. Okay. Hold on a second here. I need to actually pull up the images. We're going to get ourselves images here. I need to show you just how ridiculously James Cameron stole an idea from Baldur's Gate 3. Now then, there's nothing wrong uh, with as a writer stealing stuff from other writers. This happens all the time. All writers steal. It's totally fine, so long as you don't copyright infringe on someone else's work. I mean, even Brandon Sanderson has talked about how he's like, oh yeah, no. Writers always steal from each other. One of the things that I appreciate the most from Brandon Sanderson was when he wrote into Mistborn Secret History that theft is the greatest form of flattery. I really appreciated him being very honest and open about that. Now then, it's the Navi airship, Avatar 3. Okay, let's see here. Let me see if I can get a good picture that helps to demonstrate. Okay, here we go. We're going to save it. Let's see if I can save this. Oh, dang it. Couldn't save it. I need a good picture, good demonstration of just how James Cameron stole this idea. Okay, here we go. Hopefully this works. This one right here. Dang it, no. I need that picture. Okay, we'll take this one. Say, what? What the heck was that? Oh, come on. I need the picture. There we go. Cuttlefish ship. Okay, so I finally managed to find the images, and let's see if we can upload them now. Okay. So, from Baldur's Gate 3, this image should be showing up for you guys. So, from Baldur's Gate 3, we have... Oh, man, why... Okay. So, from Baldur's Gate 3, we have this ship right here, which is used by the Mind Flayers. This giant squid ship that flies through the air with the greatest of ease. A daring young squid on the flying trapeze. Okay. So, we have this squid flying ship from Baldur's Gate with its amazing opening scene. We then have... Let me then show you what James Cameron did. And you should be able to immediately see the similarities. If it shows up. There we are. Okay. So you should then be able to see now the Cuttlefish ship. Hopefully real soon. And basically you can tell, once you see the Cuttlefish ship, it's like, oh, wait a second. James Cameron literally stole the idea for the... he literally stole the idea for the Navi flying ships from Baldur's Gate. Rather than squids, it's cuttlefish. And it's almost the exact same ship design. He just made it 20% different by having a cuttlefish rather than a squid, and by adding these massive jellyfish that suck up air. Okay, so blatant stealing from Baldur's Gate 3 aside, which again, hey, I saw it, I recognize it, James Cameron. I get that you love Baldur's Gate 3. Thank you very much. But here's the thing. The Na'vi in all three movies have basically Stone Age equipment and technological understanding. Like, without humans interfering, from everything else that we see about them, the most high-tech thing that the Na'vi have come up with is the bow and arrow. Awesome. They can do it. They can do so much of what they need with the tech that they have. You now introduce Na'vi with ships, airships, and not only that, but in the movie, they are using nautical terms, like legit complex nautical terms. They understand how ballasts work. These Na'vi have technology that is comparable to Renaissance level shipwright work. Stone Age versus the 1400s. How are there two people who are of the exact same ancestry on this planet who engage in trade with each other? How come all the other Na'vi are in the Stone Age and these other Na'vi are in the freaking Renaissance? That makes no sense. It should not exist. And it's like, James Cameron, that's actually a really cool idea. It does not belong in this movie. I'm sorry, it doesn't. It doesn't. As cool as it is, and I actually liked it. I'm like, this is like 100 years in the future. The Na'vi have learned from the humans by actually teaming up against the humans. Cultures have crossed, and the Na'vi have suddenly realized we can harness the power of magical cuttlefish and fly through the air. And then you get a more complex society. Because there's no reason why people who regularly interact with each other and are of the exact same mind and species, that you've got one that is in the Stone Age and the other's in the Renaissance, and they have regular communication with each other. That does not work. Because the Na'vi that are from the Stone Age would be all like, wow, these Renaissance Na'vi have got all this cool stuff. They're able to have all these amazing things. They're able to hunt far easier than we do. Wow. If we want to be happy and prosperous, if we want to make sure that we can feed everyone, we are actually going to do these other amazing things like the other Na'vi are doing. Who doesn't want to have magical cuttlefish that fly through the air? And says, I mean, maybe it's something like a technology race, and the other tribes hoard their technology, but that's assuming James Cameron can come up with that, which I really doubt. Yeah, James Cameron has proven that he's by now become such a lazy story writer that he would never have thought of something like that. And again, the fact that these Na'vi are in regular communication with each other, and that we even get geopolitical conversations from them about how they're all interconnected and choosing sides between the humans and the forest Na'vi, and that there's all this stuff having to do with alliances and trade. It's like, I'm sorry, James Cameron, but you can no longer justify the fact that all the other Na'vi are in the Stone Age, and these airbenders literally are millennia ahead of them. That does not make a single lick of sense. And so it's just absolutely insanely dumb. I love the idea, but the idea doesn't work here. When I talk about how tropes are like cogs in a clock, and you need to know which gears go where in order for the clock to work correctly, this is an example of that. Like, it's a great idea. It really is. I love it. And I want more of it. It just doesn't belong in the story that he created. And so he put the wrong cog into the wrong clock. Congress says, well, hello, what did I miss? Sorry for not coming earlier. Well, that's okay, Commoncraft. Glad to have you here. This all sounds wild to me as someone who never got to watch the Avatar movies. Yeah, I can understand that. Holy cow. It's just so depressing because it's such a cool idea. Like the movies are littered with amazing ideas that are just not properly developed. And it becomes very clear that the real issue is that James Cameron was far more focused on the technology that he was developing and the scenes, how the scenes were supposed to look, rather than focusing on how the story was supposed to work. As a result, like I said, he had all these amazing gears and cogs, and he was trying to build a clock that couldn't work because he was using the wrong parts. And that's why the third movie, just doesn't work. It's got so many amazing ideas to it. It really does have some cool stuff, but it's just the wrong stuff for the wrong story. And again, the fact that like he reused all these things, that he doubled and tripled down on just bad ideas from the second movie, made it so that he hampered any chance that the third movie had to really be a strong standalone story or even a proper conclusion to anything, which it isn't. It really isn't. It just kind of puts us back to where the first movie ended, but with a promise of even more horrible things yet to come because the humans now have a city on the planet. They have a very strong presence. They're not about to go anywhere anytime soon. And was Korch alive or dead? Is the Ash tribe defeated? Are they going to come back? Who knows? The Ash tribe continued to continuously get people, despite the fact that we saw them only with like 80 tribe members, and yet they seem to continuously grow to like 100 whenever they needed a big battle to happen, even though people continue to die. So as a result, it's like just magically we are restoring people. It's more like the Na'vi are members of are like characters now in a video game, where you build your village and your village magically produces the number of people you need, so long as you've got the resources. And then lo and behold, bam, we now have enough Na'vi to have an entire army. Woohoo. Again, there were very cool moments and cool ideas, but it just wasn't put together the way that it should have been. And it really was such a mess that it wasn't like change one or two things, and then boom, you've got it. It was, no, James Cameron, you screwed up so bad that I would say, like, if you were to give me the script for this movie and be like, hey, Lars, what do we need to make it better? I would be all like, we're going back. We are scrapping everything that like the whole like whale thing. It's done. It's done. We're no more. The whales now realize, oh my gosh, we need to fight to save everyone, and we're now joining forces with you. Woohoo! So what's going to happen now? Well, the humans are now working together with the Ash tribe, realizing that they need to have native allies in order to overcome Na'vi resistance. Okay, from there, what exactly can we do? Because we're scrapping the whale idea, which then means you scrap easily half of the movie. Okay, so we scrapped half the movie. Where do we go from here? We are going to explore the relationships between these tribes, find out why they would fight each other and how this is sustained by human intervention. On top of that, because this movie's like, ooh, how does Pandora change the humans? That's a good question, and I like that idea. Also a good question, how are the humans changing Pandora? Because you just dropped a massive alien race onto this planet. They are bringing all kinds of stuff with them, especially diseases. Do the diseases affect the Na'vi? Because, again, if we want to toy around with history right here, that's absolutely something that would happen. And it'd be some devastating consequences. And so you could have it where then the humans who have joined forces with the Na'vi are trying to save the Na'vi from human diseases, which would be a really cool subplot. I would not make that the main story. I'd make that the main story of the humans are like, okay, we have everything we need. We've got guns, germs on our side, and we are going to come and we're just going to blaze our way through Jake Sully and his folk. And so Jake Sully's like, okay, using the tech that we have, the stolen tech and the Stone Age stuff that we have on hand versus humans who have learned from their mistakes, we now have to up our game, and it has to be a completely different war, and just make it where this father is trying to keep his family together, save his family after everything that happened in the second movie, while waging a massive war against the humans, a war which is transforming Pandora violently, and that they need to try to save the Na'vi from what kind of influence the humans are bringing to Pandora, while also exploring how Pandora is beginning to change the humans. With a 3-hour runtime, you can easily handle all of that and hit all of the big things that James Cameron wanted to do with this movie, while then not sacrificing it to the stupid stuff that he thought was going to be his absolute winning banger of, oh, I must share my save the globe story, which it's already implicitly there within the story of natives fighting against colonials. That's already implicitly there. He didn't need to beat the audience over the head with the message as if it were a cudgel. Ugh. And again, it could have been explored in a way better, more interesting way than stupid pacifist whales that don't make sense. Concrete says, my biggest exposure to the Avatar movies were complaints about the Na'vi being more tied to nature voids the message as they supposedly have an innate connection that makes it easy to be in harmony. Like, I never even looked for those discussions, just stumbled on them at random in some online spaces I frequent. LOL, this reminds me of the Worm fandom and how the original author messed the world building in parts, like a gang that controls a whole third of a city with hundreds of members, or another that has 20 strong people that makes them the biggest and baddest group. And because of those 20 people, and most of those 20 people died in normal bullets. Yeah, world building can be a real pain. It's one of the reasons why it's so important to get your world building nailed down right, which is one of the things I hope to do as kind of an ongoing treat for you guys throughout this year, of showing how I'm doing the world building for Whitefire, the world building for the Fox and the Hare, and world building for a secret project that I've been doing on the side. And be like, okay, yeah, world building takes a lot of work. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of questions you need to ask, and a lot of things that you have to try to make sure that you get down solidly. That you limit the amount of contradictions, because contradictions will unfortunately happen just naturally as you write, as your writing evolves, as your story evolves. There will be contradictions that will unfortunately plague your story. Good world building means that you go back and edit in order to ensure that you get the best world building experience possible. Yeah, Dorky Stage Dream says, okay, we've had pacifist whales, but what about genocide dolphins? Oh, see, now that sounds like a great movie. I'm here for genocide dolphins. TV Cast, and great to have you here, TV Account. Do you think James just got too big for his britches and just stopped caring? I would say yes, TV Account. I think that James Cameron knows that his place in the filmmaking pantheon is solidified by all of his previous successes, that he might as well be unassailable. And so he can do whatever he wants. And he's even said, look, my movies make billions of dollars, so you can't complain. And it's like, true, your movies do make billions of dollars, but that actually doesn't make them good stories. Rather, instead, the reason why people have gone to these movies is because they really like the way that you've managed to capture the way the world looks, thanks to the incredible technology that you've pioneered. However, his movies are so insanely expensive, and also get this, the contract that he managed to make with 20th Century Fox, which Disney bought, stipulated that because this movie was going to be so risky in terms of the technology that they were developing, 20th Century Fox did not put in X amount of money that would have given them more control over the movie, meaning that James Cameron actually footed more of the bill himself and therefore had more rights and more claim to its profits. So now Disney, for instance, which is now contractually obligated, since the franchise has been so successful, to pay up hundreds of millions of dollars, only gets a fraction of its profits. The rest contractually goes to James Cameron. And because the Chinese are huge fans of the Avatar franchise, and a lot of the success happens over in China, but the CCP takes 90% of the cut, that means that Disney actually stands to barely gain anything from the Avatar movies. And so that's actually why James Cameron began floating the idea around that they might not be any more movies, because Disney realized that they might not make much, if any, money off of the Avatar films. And on top of that, James Cameron has become, he's engaged for so long in these Avatar movies, which the storytelling has been, well, bad. And the thing is that the awness of this great technology is only engaging for so long. The tech, for instance, that was used to make this movie was not much of an advancement from the technology prepared for the second movie. And so James Cameron could not get involved in the innovation because there wasn't much there. And without a gripping story, honestly, then why should he care? James Cameron himself has already begun to check out of the Avatar franchise, because he's already innovated as far as he himself is able to. He's not a good storyteller anymore. He's grown bored with this. There's nothing fulfilling for the storyteller anymore about Avatar. And that's one of the reasons why he's been floating the idea that there might not be any more Avatar movies. So James Wan has come in and he's like, I will make more movies. I'll make more movies, because with James Wan now having wrapped up The Conjuring and everything, he needs another big movie franchise to keep himself relevant. So he will happily take over Avatar if Disney allows him. But I'm not sure how well that would work. And Jai says, I heard someone say the Avatar trilogy now is the same plot 3 times in a row with cinematic scenery and nothing more. Amen to whoever said that. Whoever said that is 100% correct. And that is why in the future, so like 10, 15 years from now, if there's no more Avatar movies, everyone will remember them for their cinematic feel and look. No one will ever be talking about the story because the story sucks. The story for the first movie is good for what it is. I enjoy the first movie, and I actually think it's solid for what it is. But James Cameron never progressed the story much beyond what he did in the first movie, and therefore we've been quagmired for 2 long movies for all these years without anything really progressing, and so it kind of sucks. Armame says, I heard the Percy Jackson writers are working on a Power Rangers reboot revitalization. I'm not sure what I think about that. Comcraft says, an animated billboard with a water fountain attached to a sync up with the water. Suddenly, excuse me, I just got a new TTRPG that is compatible with solo play, and I'm also wondering about making interesting interactions with aliens. Awesome. I like the idea. Suddenly reminded the Percy Jackson show. Show looks rough, bad, and bland. Costume design in many parts. No increase to the budget to season 2. Hire a lot of famous and expensive actors and waste money. On an animated billboard with a water fountain attached to a sink up with the water effects. Oof. That's a big oof. Dolphins would do that. They're vicious. Oh, yeah. Dolphins are vicious to almost anything. I mean, they, for whatever reason, they're kind to sailors for the most part, just awful to everything and everyone else. Also, has anyone here seen Frank Della Book of Spooks? I have not seen that. Murdrones Fight Till I'm Good Enough is now has 12 million views. Awesome. Well, that's good. Okay, so the Power Rangers reboot for the show. Okay, I mean, we'll see how it goes. I think that anything Power Rangers related, we really just need to rely on what the Japanese could come up with. I don't think that American writers, or I'd say the writers who would get hired on for such a project, are in the right headspace to do a decent Power Rangers story. I think that if you were to get fans of Power Rangers who know how to write, you could come up with something very interesting. But Hollywood writers have definitely not shown their mettle recently, or what their mettle is just not worthy of a good story, is not worthy of something like Power Rangers, in my opinion. So yeah, coming back to it, Avatar Fire and Ash, to me, was a massive disappointment. Again, with things that I liked, but the things I liked did not work for the movie. Rather, they were really awesome concepts that would have worked better in a different movie entirely. So yeah, Avatar Fire and Ash. I mean, I'm happy I saw it with the people I did. I had a good time, but I just don't have any real confidence in the Avatar franchise going forward. It's fallen off. Zets is available on YouTube if you're interested. Also, the series Power Rangers is based on is ending. Okay. Comic Guy says, hey Lars, what are your thoughts on Jujutsu Kaisen season 3 just came out, so it's fresh in my head. All right. I have thoughts about that. I have not yet seen the newest episode. I read this arc of the manga. And I'm going to tell you outright, it sucked. I know that Jujutsu Kaisen fans love everything Jujutsu Kaisen other than the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen, which, I'll be honest, I love the ending of Jujutsu Kaisen. I actually think it's fantastic. And people were way too absorbed in cool fights, yay. The third arc, not the third arc, but this current arc, the calling games of Jujutsu Kaisen, is a fantastic. It's a fantastic idea. It really is, and the manga botched it. The reason why the manga botched it is because it literally over explained everything that is happening. Because everything that these sorcerers are doing is so weird, so complex, just so out there that you're all like, okay, what? So everything had to be explained, literally everything. And you could not just watch the flow of the battle and learn from what the characters are doing. No simple explanations for anything. Now, I love complex magic systems. I love inventive fighting. All of that stuff is really good. The problem is that every fight in the manga hit the pause button to explain what was going to happen next. Hit the play button for three panels, then hit the pause button again to say, now this is what's going to happen next, and explain everything. Hit the play button for 3 more panels, then hit the pause button to explain again. Nearly every chapter of the manga throughout the culling arc is a massive info dump. Info dumps should be used sparingly and used in interesting, intelligent ways so as to not bore the audience. Info dumps should never pause the action. And the writer should have been far more confident in the inventive ways that they were telling these culling games, which again is a fantastic concept of how all of these sorcerers are going to be forced to fight together, and it's basically one giant murder game in order to fuel a ritual that will allow for the entire world to be changed by curse magic, so that way curses can reign supreme. It's a cool concept, horribly executed until Suskina shows up at the very end. The moment that he shows up and really becomes the center figure of the games, boom, the story runs as it's supposed to. It runs all the way to its ending. Its ending is great. And everything else about the arc sucks. And I know there are people who are all like, no, you just don't understand. I'm like, no, I do understand because I read it. I actually read it. I faithfully read every chapter as it was released. And I was not impressed. And honestly, I stuck out with it because of a sunk cost fallacy. As I was like, I've dedicated so much time and interest, I might as well finish it. Which was not entertaining again until the very end of the arc. So, my hope for the anime is that the anime can fix that. If the anime can control the pacing and really condense the explanations down to something that's far more palatable, it can be a very, very good arc, animated. And it can redeem what the manga did. So, here's to hoping that the anime is excellent. All right, that is my little rant right there. Omega says, correction, it's being placed on hiatus, but it's replaced by a Gavin reboot. Gozier is actually pretty cool aside from the incident with Gosyu Unicorn's actor or actress. Okay. Let's see here. Concraft says, I heard it is better in parts from what was shown already, like Naoya fixing up his hair with one hand while fighting Chosu with the other is amazing. Apparently, these 2 new episodes are a bit weird at parts because they were used in the movie, like more artsy than normal. Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to watch it in order to see what my thoughts of it really are. But again, I've read the manga. The manga was absolutely unsatisfying. Hopefully, the anime does better. Okay, guys, I have rambled on long enough. I can feel my voice going, and the cough will soon come on hard. So, with that all being said, everyone, I will have to cut it off there. I know, right after an epic rant. But Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This has been fun. Sorry again that it happened a little bit later, but I was a busy day. Hope you guys understand. And again, thank you so much for still tuning on in, for participating. You guys, as always, make these so lively and fun. And now I realize that there's a whole lot more I need to talk about, especially when it comes to dungeon crawling in the future. So, with all that being said, until I see you guys in the next video, tschüss.